We Happy Few is an action-adventure title of sorts set in an alternative timeline, basically an alternative version of World War II. As a result, both sides seem to suffer from this, and the Germans have gained control over the British Empire. During that time, Britain was affected by a chemical warfare experiment which has essentially forced the inhabitants of a fictional city called Wellington Wells to use drugs to survive, but this isn't just any ordinary drug. The invention of a hallucinogenic drug called joy suppresses all unhappy memories, leaving them to experience immense joy and happiness, but as a side effect, it causes the user to have a decreased recognition of moral choices, and thus everything what the player sees might not be as it is. We Happy Few has actually undergone a lot of changes since its original announcement in 2015. Originally, this game was announced as a Kickstarter project and received around 2,000 backers, allowing the developers to create an alpha version, creating a randomly generated world with the survival elements. Although they received a lot of feedback, Compulsion Games then opted to do an early access version of this game, playable on the Xbox Game Preview program in 2016, in order to update and change the game based on feedbacks from the users. Originally, they aimed to create a roguelike survival game with open world elements and showed off a playable character called Arthur. The game was then a first-person shooter with light narrative element, repeated gameplay which would take around 4 hours to complete. The game then lacked a narrative element, and although the devs did state that they want to hold out on the narrative elements as much as possible, it didn't help the players much. Eventually the game got a publisher, Gearbox, which definitely helped the studio financially as they weren't reliant on backers anymore, but it also pushed up the price of the game and the development time of the game, which didn't sit well with the backers at all. Fast forward to January of 2018, and Compulsion Games had an almost game-ready title which had a 20-hour narrative, 3 playable characters, and a free survivor mode which will come later during an update. Thus they still have the original vision of their game in that survival mode. Although Compulsion Games was bought by Microsoft, the game is launching on the PS4 as well. So what do you actually do in We Happy Few, and does the narrative hold up? The game is entirely in first-person mode, aside from a few cutscenes, and has a beautifully crafted art style. You start out as Arthur, an average person going about his daily routine, until you stumble upon a newspaper article that reminds you of something from the past. This is where you get to choose if you take more joy in order to stay happy and forget everything, or toss it away, seeing the world for what it is. Once you go off your joy, you're called a downer. The word downer refers to something or someone that is depressed and doesn't fully function normally, thus people who is on their joy sees themselves as normal. Once you clear the tutorial area, the game begins to open up a bit more. You'll have a variety of quests throughout your playthrough, as well as multiple side quests. There is also a ton of crafting, such as weapon crafting, first aid kits, lockpicks, outfits, and much more. You also have ability points which you can use to improve your character with sneaking, fighting, and the way you use items. Aside from your health, you'll also have to keep an eye out on your stamina, as you often might need to take some water, eat some food, or even sleep for a bit, which really brings out the survival elements of this game. Enemies can easily hear you, so sneaking around is important in certain areas where you can hide in bins, under beds, in closets, grass, and even in barrels. Once you knocked an enemy down, hiding their bodies are important to avoid raising the alarm and for others to come running towards you. Arthur isn't the only playable character though, although he is more of a survival kind of guy, trying to scrape together what he can find, crafting weapons and items. Sally is more of a stealth-like character, using syringes and keen tactics to lure away enemies. She is more well known in the world of We Happy Few than what Arthur is, thus being sneaky is an important element to her character. Her playstyle is much different, and it took some time getting used to after playing with Arthur for a couple of hours, getting used to the way he fights. Her story is definitely an interesting one, and without spoiling anything, I didn't expect how their stories would cross paths. Going into the third and final character, Ollie, He is more of a brute force than the previous two. He is a Scotsman and more of a lone wolf kind of guy. Being an old soldier, he uses bombs, explosives and strength weapons to fight his way through, and being sneaky isn't really something you do, thus it is vastly different from the previous two characters. The way you play with these different characters is cleverly brought into the story, and it isn't like you can choose any one of them from the start. Once you've played with each character, the story does take an interesting turn, and although the game ends with a satisfying conclusion, it does leave it open for more. Hence why there will be a season pass with more content planned in the future. As mentioned, there is also a survival mode, but at the time of the review it wasn't available as the devs did state it'll only be available as a free update at a later stage. There is some replay value to be had, playing out missions differently, however much of the end result will still be the same. I played this on a PC and the game ran fairly smooth, although I did have a few save game issues, but thankfully the devs did provide backup save files in case of such an issue, thus this is a problem that will be patched out during launch. Overall, I spent about 18 hours in Wellington Wells and will be diving back in once the survival mode is out. It definitely shows that they took care with the story, as they focused more on the gameplay elements during the beginning and early access part of the game, keeping much of the story as a secret. As a major fan of the BioShock franchise, I can definitely feel that much of the game took inspiration to We Happy Few, and although you don't have plasmids or big daddies, you'll easily find similarities during the playthrough. We Happy Few is a game that I'll remember for a long time, and even though it has gone through a lot of changes, I can safely say that We Happy Few is definitely worth buying at a full price, and had I put a score on this, I'd rate it an 8 out of 10. Although it does have some audio problems and technical issues, it's nothing that can't be fixed during patches. I'd like to thank Gearbox and Compulsion Games for providing me with a review code for this game, and for more on We Happy Few, check out the rest of my channel. Let me know in the comment sections below what you thought of this game, and if you like this video then give me a thumbs up. If you dislike it then give me a thumbs down, but please tell me why so I can improve my videos. My name is Frank, I'm the Red Side Guy, and frankly, thank you for watching. Catch you guys in the next video.
What are you waiting for?
You are off your joy. Take one of mine. Oh my lord. He's a downer. Call security. We've got a downer.